my god, this is going to be...
This is going to be an episode.
We have a ton to talk about and also not a lot to talk about, but...
No. Again, most of my notes are just, what is happening?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you can start.
Okay. Hello, and welcome back to more Films Under Constant Critique, where we take a look at films, some good, some bad, and some downright awful. I'm Bongo Baikov, joined by our host, Maverick, Dren, Zaria. This week we have a very unique double feature. The 2006 and 2009 action movies Crank and Crank 2 High Voltage.
Yeah. I'm taking all the blame for this one. This was my idea, and I apologize. The first Crank movie, it should have just been one movie. I mean, really, like, it's just...
Yeah.
It was released September 1st, 2006. Well, not so much released, but...
More like unleashed.
Yeah. It escaped from the hospital and is wreaking havoc on the countryside. It cost $12 million and made $42.9 million.
A tragically high amount of money for this movie.
I'm surprised it wasn't higher considering Jason Statham's in it.
Yeah.
The tagline for the movie, one of them, was, "There are 1,000 ways to raise your adrenaline. Today, Chev Chelios will need every single one."
That's a bit on the nose.
To be fair, it is fitting for a movie that is on the nose. Okay, so initial thoughts. I think I'll start here. Okay, so I thought that I'd seen more of this than I had. I think I saw part of it. It was one scene. And we'll definitely be talking about this scene later, because it is... So I was imagining this movie would have a lot of energy to it. I don't know why, but I just had a feeling. I kind of felt like, because our last podcast, we did The Fugitive, it was PG-13, it was pretty tame.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to do something a little bit more extreme, and I kind of regret this decision now. And I mean, the plot of this movie is about a literal adrenaline rush, so you kind of know going in it's gonna get a bit crazy. Another thing is, before watching this, I had watched all 4 Transporter movies, so I had been seeing quite a bit of Jason Statham recently. And again, those were kind of bland, cookie-cutter PG-13 action movies, although the second one had its moments because of how dumb it got. So here we go. R-rated. I was hoping that at least be crazy when you have a lot to talk about. And I also chose to do these because they're on Netflix.
Yep.
It's pretty easy to find them. And you'd mentioned the trailer for the first one at one point.
Yeah.
Which, if you want to talk about that a little bit when you get to your initial thoughts, etc.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if you hated these movies, I'm sorry. You can blame me for forcing you to watch them. So, my thoughts on the first Crank movie. This movie, it was loud, blaring, in your face, ridiculous, and I kind of liked it. Either in spite or because of those things. At one point, Jason Statham says, "This is fucked," and...
That's fairly accurate.
This movie has 2 directors, and it kind of feels like a movie made by 2 people. if those two people were a perverted high schooler and a 47-year-old drug addict. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Such a weird movie. I can't decide if everything about this movie is a negative or if everything about this movie is a positive. But I mean, either way, I was kind of in the mood for something like this, something weird and dumb and extreme, and especially after The Fugitive, which I like The Fugitive a lot. It's a good movie, but I felt it was a little too normal to do a podcast on. I feel like our better podcasts are when we do unhinged stuff like this, so this fit the bill. Okay. And we'll get into the later.
Yeah. So my initial thoughts, my only previous exposure to Crank and its sequel were from a single trailer that I saw. I think it was on my Blu-ray copies of the Rambo movies that played.
I think you mentioned it when we were doing either. I think it was when we were doing the Rambo 3 podcast, but I can't.
It would have either been First Blood Part 2 or it would have been Rambo 3.
Yeah. And you said that was also where you saw the trailer for the fourth one.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was First Blood. Wait a minute. It might have been the First Blood podcast now that I think about it. But it was one of the Rambo movies. I know that for sure.
Yeah. And then I had mentioned it to you and you're like, oh yeah, that's the movie where the guy has to keep his adrenaline up or he dies.
Yeah.
And going into this movie, those are my only two pieces of context. A trailer I had not seen since we had watched the Rambo movies, and your comment about it being a guy who has to keep his adrenaline up. So I had basically no idea what this was going in. It is one of the most just fast-paced, psychotically shot movies I've ever seen. It is pure chaos, and it's not a good movie by any means, but I absolutely loved watching the first one.
I think we're gonna have to, because we used to use the term Evil Dead 2 pacing.
Is it gonna be crank pacing now?
We might have to start using that term, because you're right, the pacing on this movie is ridiculous.
I remember one scene from the first movie that moved kind of slow. And it was a 5-minute scene with like a 2.5-minute flashback in the middle of it, and the rest of it's just pure insanity.
I think I watched this in the morning too, so that was definitely a way to wake me up, was watching this movie. And that's kind of how the movie starts too, where like Jason Statham just wakes up and immediately things start going to shit for him.
He wakes up, he feels like he's dying, finds a DVD that says "fuck you" on it, and then learns that he was poisoned in the middle of the night by a drug called the Chinese shit.
But basically, you liked it because of how insane and stupid it was, basically.
Yeah, no, it was an absolutely psychotic film, but it was incredibly fun to watch.
I definitely needed something slower after watching it, because my god, like...
It's a good thing that you...
I did not watch these on the same day, because I'm like, oh my god, that's gonna be too much.
That would have been too much.
Because another thing, it turned out that one of the scenes I thought was in this movie was in the second one.
Oh, really?
And we'll get to that scene for sure when we get to that one. Okay, so getting into the directors. It was directed by Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor. And they also directed Gamer, which makes sense because that movie has the same headache-inducing camera work. It's probably even worse in that movie than in this. They also did Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance.
And I was actually, because I did look these guys up, I wanted to know if Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance has as psychotic of a pace as these movies do.
Not quite, but it does make sense because that is one of the worst edited movies I've ever seen. Like, the editing, the only way you can describe the editing in that movie is schizophrenic. It's just, oh my god. And Brian Taylor also directed the masterpiece, which also has Nicolas Cage in it, actually, Mom and Dad.
Oh, really?
Which, that movie is hilarious. It also has one of my favorite taglines, which is, they brought you into this world, they can take you out. Yeah. Oh god, Matt, the only way this movie would be more insane is if Nicolas Cage was in it.
Yeah.
It's the only way it could be more insane. Like, speaking of the cast, Jason Statham is in this.
Yep, as Chev Chelios.
Do we need to say who Jason Statham is? I think most people.
Probably not.
I actually saw one of his movies in the theater. I saw The Meg in the theaters.
Oh, really?
And Expendables 3. I saw that in the theater as well. I just realized. But yeah, he's most known for the Crank, Transporter, the first three at least. He's not in the fourth one for some reason. Ray Stevenson's in the fourth one, actually.
Oh, really?
And he's the Meg, he's in that. And Meg 2, which came out a few months ago. I didn't see that one yet. And yeah, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, among other things. I think people know who Jason Statham is. Snatch. I think he's in Snatch. But anyway.
He's in some of the Fast and Furious movies.
Yes, he is, including Calvin and Hobbs and Shaw. As my dad called it. We also got country singer Dwight Yoakam. I was not expecting to see Dwight Yoakam in a movie on this podcast.
And he plays some, like, sham of a doctor who's lost his medical license.
Yes. Yep. He's like Professor Plum, I guess, from the Clue movie. Only in that way, though. They don't have much in common besides that. Which Dwight Yoakam's also in Sling Blade.
Huh.
And he's actually really good in that movie as this abusive, drunk dad. Which you would not expect Dwight Yoakam to play that. And he also directed the Western movie South of Heaven, West of Hell.
Huh.
Which is fucking terrible. Don't watch it. Although it does contain, I think, the only acting performance of one of my favorite singers, Warren Zevon. For some reason, he's in that movie. They don't even let him sing in that. Amy Smart, which she was in Starship Troopers. We should have done Starship Troopers. We shouldn't have wasted our time with this crank garbage. We should have done Starship Troopers. Just the first one. I don't want to watch the sequels. Efren Ramirez, which you might recognize him because he played Pedro in Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, what? Oh, no, that's why I recognized him. Oh, no.
Remember, if you vote for him, all of your wildest dreams will come true.
And apparently they did.
He's in the second one as well, but he's not playing the same character. He's playing the brother of that character.
Yeah. And all they did was put a wig on him to make him look different. Really.
And I think give him like eyeliner or something.
Yeah.
Doesn't he? I think he rides like a motorcycle, whatever.
Yeah.
We also got Glenn Howerton, which I was not expecting to see him in this because he's Dennis Reynolds from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. which I was like just watching that show like a month ago, and I saw him in this, and I was like, wait a minute, is that Dennis Reynolds? I feel like that's what's gonna happen now. Whenever I watch a movie, is I'm gonna be like, oh wait, that they were in yeah,
Crank.
Always Sunny.
Crank 2.
Or oh god, not Crank. Okay. Chester Bennington had a cameo during the pharmacy scene, which I was like, oh wow, I was not expecting to see him here. No Linkin Park songs on the soundtrack, though.
Which is a disappointment.
That is a missed opportunity. Which one would they have, though?
Not sure. None of them really inspire violence, as far as I know.
Burn to the Ground? Is that what the name of that song is?
I haven't listened to a whole lot of Linkin Park, so...
It's been a while since I listened to them, so... I used to back in, like, middle school. And we also have a returning cast member. We have, Sam Witwer.
Yep.
Who was the voice of Darth Maul in Solo: A Star Wars Story. And he also has minor roles in Force Awakens and Rogue One. And he has a minor role in this as well, so... Congratulations, Sam.
He keeps just popping up.
It's better than when the other Darth Maul actor was in Mortal Kombat Annihilation, so there's that.
This was apparently the first movie he was ever in, actually.
Oh, really?
Like, he was in some TV before, but Crank is his first, like, theatrical movie he was in.
Oh god, imagine that being your first movie.
And then the next one was The Mist.
The Mist. Oh, jeez. No, The Mist isn't that bad. It's okay. I didn't like the ending, though. But anyway. I did find Leonard Maltin's review for Crank.
I'm actually a little shocked he watched Crank.
Yeah, and guess what? He watched the second one as well.
Oh, no.
So, okay, what do you think he gave Crank?
I'm gonna say he gave it a bomb.
A bomb, okay. Oh, that's a little generous. No, he gave it 2 stars.
Oh, okay.
Silly premise may entertain fans with the attention span of a beagle. The action doesn't let up, but forget about logic, good acting, and smart dialogue. It took 2 directors to make this non-thinking man's thriller.
That is actually one thing I forgot to mention during my initial thoughts. You don't need to have a biomedical engineering degree to see that all of the science that they talk about in these movies is bad. But having him just makes it so much worse.
It was going by too fast for me to really process some of it, so but you can get into that if you want, since you're apparently you're the scientist between the two of us. I'm just a lowly script writer here. So basically, the main plot of this is that Jason Statham is an assassin who was poisoned by some asshole. So now he has to keep his adrenaline up or he'll die. So it's sort of like Speed if you're a Place the Bus with Jason Statham. I remember the last podcast we did, you called these movies the heart-pounding adventures of Jason Statham, and...
Yeah. It's pretty accurate.
Were you, trying to be literal with that? Because,
I was trying to make a joke about the adrenaline. I didn't know that was also, the exact same thing they were doing in the second movie.
So, I don't even know whether to call this... I guess I do have it split into pros and cons, but it doesn't really matter that much, because they might as well be the same thing. Okay, so pros... It's 87 minutes long.
Yeah, no, the short run time definitely benefits the movie. if this had been 2.5 hours and it felt like this, it would be unwatchable.
Oh, you mean like the second one?
Yeah.
Okay, so um and the pace just is insane because like they keep upping the ante too. Like it seems like every other scene he just has to do more and more insane shit, and it just goes so off the rails. Like there's like just no time to like.
Process or breathe.
We kept saying like I guess the pacing in this is more like Turkish Star Wars than than Evil Dead 2. But even Turkish Star Wars would occasionally slow down.
It's strange when you have to give Turkish Star Wars slightly more credit than than a movie. And the fact that we reached that with Crank 1 is impressive.
Yeah. This movie does have some interesting style choices.
It is incredibly stylistic. I'm not sure if most of the decisions were good, but they were there. Sometimes when people say words, subtitles will just show up on the screen. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes when people are on the phone, you see like a projection of the other person on the wall behind them. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes the same scene repeats like 3 times in a row. Like, so you'll see like the same punch get repeated over and over again, or the audio gets weird. It's very stylistic, but I don't know how much of it is good.
Oh my goodness. I was gonna say the main thing was like, whoever made this really likes split screens.
Yeah.
At one point, you see like 4 split screens. It's and 3 of the 4 screens have nudity on them, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, no, when it comes to nudity, it's like the most like stereotypical like 2000s action movie levels.
It's ridiculous, yeah. And we get to see things from Jason Statham's perspective, which is new.
Yeah, but because that happens during the intro, I remember, and I put down that it kind of reminded me of like Hardcore Henry or whatever that one movie was.
Yeah, kind of like that. Or that episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where the entire thing is from Frank's point of view. That's kind of what this movie. I wonder if that episode was a parody of this movie. It might have been, actually. And it also made me wonder, like, if this just happens to Jason Statham on a daily basis.
This is just, you know, that being John Malkovich, this is just being Jason Statham.
Being Jason Statham. I want to see that now. Somebody has to switch, like, somebody ends up in Jason Statham's head, and that's why all this crazy shit is happening to him now. Oh, that'd be so funny. It'd be sort of like, maybe it'd be sort of like Last Action Hero a little bit, where they, like, just anyway. But speaking of Jason Statham, he is Jason Statham in this movie.
Yeah.
He's just this angry British dude that fucks people up. Except not only that, he's on drugs in this.
Quite a few different ones, too.
To his credit, he does seem like he's actually fucked up on drugs in this movie. Like, it was like making me wonder if he was just method acting during this.
It looks like he was having just an absolute blast recording this movie.
But he keeps a straight face too. Like, he seems really
Yeah.
serious, like, during all this, and like that just makes it even funnier that like he was able to take all of this ridiculous shit seriously.
He's also a gigantic asshole.
He is, yes, he is. That's another thing. We've like talked about this before on certain podcasts. The From Dusk Till Dawn movies, I think, are a good example, where just they made the characters just such completely unlikable, and this one,
Yeah.
especially, and especially in the sequel, which we'll get to that. But yeah, his character is just like, I mean, just everybody in this movie is just awful. Like, just
Like I like early on in the movie, Jason Statham throws a taxi driver out of his taxi, points at him, and starts yelling "Al Qaeda, Al Qaeda," and a bunch of random like civilians come and start beating the shit out of the guy.
yeah. I wonder when this movie was made.
And honestly, that feels more like a scene from the second movie after watching both of these.
It does, yeah, it really does. And just the crazy shit he does in this movie, like he drives through a mall while being chased by cops. Like, that scene was reminding me of Blues Brothers right there. Because that does happen in Blues Brothers, except here it's like they're playing it serious. And then he crashes his car on the escalator.
And then he just rides on the car all the way up the escalator before getting out. It's also like the worst car crash special effect I've seen in a while.
Oh my goodness. And the fact that scene isn't even the craziest thing that happens in this movie, that says a lot. Because with a lot of movies, that would just be the climax, is they just crash the car on an escalator. But hey, like Mitch Hedberg would always say,
there would never be an escalator temporarily out of order sign. Only an escalator temporarily stairs. Sorry for the convenience.
he steals a bunch of energy drinks from a gas station. That was one thing I liked about this is, okay, the pacing is fast. You know, it keeps moving and moving, and the bare minimum of a plot you get, I actually do think is kind of an interesting premise.
Yeah.
Where it's just he has to do all this stuff just to keep himself going. And the methods he uses to like keep himself going, I just find really funny. Like when he breaks into the gas station and steals energy drinks.
Yeah, like energy drinks and like 8-hour energy bottles and stuff.
Or the part where he like steals nasal spray from a pharmacist, then goes and robs a hospital.
To steal what's basically insulin.
He like runs into Dennis Reynolds and he forces him to use defibrillators on it. It just gets so crazy during parts of this.
And then one of the things he tries is like the single most gratuitous sex scene I think I've ever seen. I'm gonna revise it actually real quick. The second most gratuitous sex scene I've ever seen.
What's the first?
The second movies.
Oh, okay. I was like, going, what is it gonna be? Is it gonna be Oppenheimer or something? And I'm like thinking, no, the Oppenheimer's sex scenes weren't anywhere near as gratuitous as this. But okay, I guess since we're talking about that, okay, that scene, that was the only scene that I'd seen from this movie prior to seeing this movie. I like saw that scene, and I'm like, this is the most ridiculous sex scene. Like, one of the most ridiculous sex scenes I've ever seen. Like, it's absurd, because basically what he does, okay, he's talking to his girlfriend. He told her that he was a video game programmer, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a believable shot for...
yeah, Jason Statham is a video game programmer.
What kind of video games would he make? Like...
He'd probably just be making crank video games.
Which, that is another thing. These movies do feel like video games. They feel like Jason Statham on drugs in Grand Theft Auto. That's kind of what it feels like. So then he tries telling her he's an assassin. She doesn't believe him. And then just in the middle of the street with a bunch of people watching.
In order to raise his adrenaline, he starts having just sex out in public. And it is just so gratuitous. There's like a school bus full of like
They're like Japanese
what I think are supposed to
schoolgirls.
be Japanese school children just watching and laughing, and everyone's around them just like, what the hell is going on?
I remember watching. I was like wondering if this scene was in the second movie or what, because I was like kind of waiting for this scene to show up because I knew it was from one of these movies, and then it got to that scene. I'm like, yeah, it was from this movie. Okay, I can't imagine what it would be like seeing that scene the first time. Well, okay, I'm trying to remember my reaction when I first saw it. I think I was kind of disgusted by it, actually. I remember I was much more of a prude back then. But even now, like now, I just was kind of laughing at it just because of how over the top it was. Because I mean, who does that? Like just out in
They
the
were like,
middle.
all right, how do we fit it? How do we fit in a sex scene when we can't stay in the same place for 30 seconds? Just have it out in public with everybody watching.
Everybody's watching it, and then they repeat this in the next movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a scene that might be even more ridiculous. But yeah, that's basically the entire movie. It's just Jason Statham just
Yeah.
doing crazy shit. I mean, it's absurd.
The final confrontation between him and like these two gang leaders is insane.
Oh my god, yeah, like just because that's where he like points his finger at them and he like shoots a guy with his finger.
Yeah, like he makes like a finger gun and shoots him, and the one guy starts praying because they all think he's just now able to shoot bullets from his fingers for some reason. But it turns out that there was like another gang leader that he was supposed to have a hit on that he saved that shows up to help him. And so there's this massive like rooftop firefight that happens.
And that building looks so weird too, because there's like these. It's like this skyscraper, right?
Yeah.
And there's like these clear spheres with naked women hanging off of it. I was like, what the fuck was that? This feels like that felt like something that be like some weird dream or something. Not like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like what a
And then
that'd be something a Bond villain would do, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah. And then, like, one of the main villains, he's, like, wrestling him off of a helicopter, and as they're falling, he snaps the guy's neck.
In midair, too. They're, like, just falling.
Falling for, like, thousands upon thousands of feet.
And what I love about that, too, is that he just falls and crashes on a car and just dies. Like, the movie ends with Jason Statham dying.
And one other thing I want to point out, just because it comes back in the second movie, as he's falling, he has like this like sort of heartfelt like message he's trying to leave his girlfriend over the phone. And I'll bring this back up again because it does technically show back up in Crank 2. Yeah, speaking of his girlfriend, they have a surprisingly wholesome relationship throughout most of the movie.
Well, until you get to the...
Yeah, until you get to the Chinatown sex scene.
And
but, like,
the part
that...
when... And the part when she gives him a blowjob during a car chase. Like, that was... That might be even more ridiculous than... That's so irresponsible. Oh my god.
But then, like, you know, before that, when...
He has to keep his adrenaline up. He also, like, just... Oh my lord.
But he tries to be, like, calm and collected around her and not scare her, which is so... not what you were expecting.
This honestly felt like a dark comedy. Like... There were parts of it I wasn't sure if it was trying to be funny or not. And I was like, because I was laughing at quite a lot of this movie just because of how weird and dumb it got from parts of it.
Yeah.
There's like a really out of nowhere use of Everybody's Talking from Midnight Cowboy when he's on a police motorcycle. Oh, that was a weird image.
Yeah.
And then he like takes his hand off and then stands on the seat of the motorcycle while it's going. Oh yeah, Dwight Yoakam's in this movie. We forgot about him. He's just this weird like doctor who lost his license, and basically he spends the entire movie chastising Jason Statham over the phone.
And like delivering the only bits of exposition we really get for all of like 20 seconds at a time.
That is kind of a clever way to do exposition, though. Have a character who
Yeah.
knows more than the main character tell them what they have to do, you know. It gets so...
It's amazing how fast they figure out that they need to keep his adrenaline up. It's like within the first 10 minutes.
That's basically this movie, man. Is just, we gotta go fast. We gotta keep moving.
We can't let the camera sit still for too long.
Imagine if Speed had the same pacing that this movie did. Like,
the bus has to keep a constant speed of 180 miles an hour. It's just gotta be flying the whole time.
There's one part where he like takes some crack while getting a ride. Which I was like going, okay, at this rate, he's done more drugs in a day than Hunter S. Thompson. It's just...
And then he gets in another
I kept wondering, like, this dude's gonna drop dead at some point, isn't he? Because he's just... he's, like, the only things he's running on are pure adrenaline and like drugs. Like, it's just this dude's gonna drop dead at some point in the next 30 minutes.
And I like when he's in that other taxi ride with the Haitian guy. He's like, hey, you're not gonna die in my cab, crackhead, and gives him some random Haitian drug that he just has in his glove box.
Oh my God, it's just...
One thing kind of weird is every time they tried to, like, put in stuff about him as a kid and his mother.
Oh. I forgot about that. This movie is so fast that, hey, I might have missed something. I remember there was a scene in the second movie that was kind of like that, and I remember in that movie being like, this feels a little out of nowhere.
Yeah, because there's a little bit of it in the first movie, like when he's in the elevator talking to the one, like, Japanese businessman who starts speaking in the voice of his mother and then him.
Oh, okay, I remember that now. That was strange.
Yeah.
He was, like, hallucinating or something.
Yeah, because I think that's after the doctor put him on meth.
That was so strange. Like, again, how many drugs is this guy gonna do? Like, at some point, this movie, I was waiting for it to turn into, like, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with Jason Statham. Like, another funny detail I thought is when Jason Statham says ding, time's up, they actually play a ding sound effect. I don't know if you remember that.
I think I do.
He shoves a dude's hand in a sewing machine at one point.
And like the guy can't get his hand out, so he's just standing there getting his hand stabbed over and over again.
That was so painful to watch. Like,
he also just slices a dude's hand off at one point with a meat cleaver.
I remember that, yeah. He like has a butcher knife or something. That was towards the beginning of the movie, if I remember right. And then after killing the guy, he throws the dude's hand to Pedro and says, "Wanna hold hands?" So bad. I think this is the first movie we've done on the podcast with the word cunt in it. I'm pretty sure it is. Which, I mean, yeah, if you have Jason Statham in your movie, might as well have him say cunt at some point.
And I like when he says it, the word cunt appears over his forehead.
Another thing is he's killing these dudes in like a warehouse or something, and his girlfriend followed him. because she wanted to see if he was telling the truth about him being an assassin. I'm like, okay, that's a stupid idea, lady.
Yeah.
Also, the acting in this is not great.
No.
The bad guys are pretty bad, and his girlfriend's also pretty bad too.
Let's be honest. Dwight Yoakam was one of the better actors in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, hey, he was in Sling Blade. He knows what he's doing. Imagine if Billy Bob Thornton was in this movie as well. Oh god, there's a crossover. Team up Billy Bob Thornton's character from Sling Blade with Jason Statham's character from the Crank movies. Or just any Jason Statham. It could just be Jason Statham. I mean, he plays the same guy in every movie, basically. I will say, this movie came close to feeling like a real movie.
Yeah.
It came really close. Something which the second movie did not succeed at.
Oh boy.
He starts hearing voices. The directing is energetic, I'll give it that.
Yeah, no, it's got a lot of style to it.
But we can get into some... Well, we've already kind of been talking about the cons. I have the color grading. It's not very good. And it's still better than the color grading in the second movie.
And I know we've mentioned the pacing a million times, but it's almost headache-inducing just how quick this movie goes.
I think I might have paused the movie at some point and, like, took a break, because I was like, okay, this is a bit much. The dialogue, it's pretty bad. I mean...
It's really bad.
There were lines that probably weren't supposed to be funny that I laughed at, and it also just... The acting, like I mentioned before, the acting in this is pretty bad. The camera work...
Oh god, the camera work's terrible.
It's filmed like a metal music video, like just...
And... the thing is, like, it is supposed to be filmed like that, but that doesn't mean that it's good.
It's still hard to watch. And there were also some choices that I was like, that's interesting. Like how you see shots of Jason Statham's heart inside of his chest at one point.
This movie's also, like, really racist. Not as racist as the second movie, but it's pretty racist.
I was gonna say, this is like, this movie just hates everybody, like, because there aren't any sympathetic characters. Everybody's an asshole in this, unless they're, like, a really minor character. Because even Jason Statham is a jerk in this, because he's just really rude and, like, racist and homophobic to everybody he meets. Like, it's just... I was like, well, no wonder he's in this mess then if he's... And it gets even worse with the next movie, but we'll talk about that. Another shot I thought was kind of funny is you see what Jason Statham's heart looks like on the inside of his chest. You also see a pigeon's heart for some reason.
Yeah, there's like a pigeon that it just cuts to and you see its heart going fast real quick. It's like, what was the point? Did the editor make a mistake? Was it supposed to go to Jason Statham and he picked the pigeon instead for whatever reason?
The only other movie I can think of that has a weird out-of-place shot of a pigeon is in Moonraker. There's like a chase scene where like a pigeon does a double take, but it's so clearly edited. So and even that is less out of place than we have to see what a pigeon's heart looks like. Apparently, it looks sort of like a human heart. Interesting. And the camera shakes so much during this. I do not like shaky cam, and like parts of this were hard to watch. I was kidding. I got a headache from parts of this movie. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the editing is ridiculous. I was like wondering if I was gonna have to take adrenaline shots just to get through the movie.
Yeah, maybe the movie would have made a bit more sense.
Maybe I should have done drugs before watching it. I don't know. I was exhausted after like the first 5 minutes. Like,
I know, it just goes so fast.
and again, the style choices, some of them didn't even make any sense. There were like tons of black and white freeze frames.
They would just repeat like 2 seconds over and over again. They would distort Jason Statham screaming at the beginning.
The scene transitions were so funny
Ugh.
too, and I don't think they were supposed to be.
No.
Whoever edited this movie, like, they had to have been on like the same drugs that Jason Statham was using. Also, fucking Achy Breaky Heart is in this movie.
That's right.
Which I agree with Weird Al when he's saying that if you play that song, that Achy Breaky song, I might blow up my radio. Also, the location title cards in this are ridiculous.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm complaining about this, but they have this like really stupid font that's like bright red.
It gets worse in the second movie, though.
It sticks out so much. Yeah, they repeat it in the second movie, too. And there's, like, no reason for them to be there, either.
No.
Also, what is character development?
No one learns anything throughout this movie.
Hell, if you just left it with this movie, Jason Statham just dies in this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, the characters, they're so surface level and so caricatured. There's no substance to anybody. They're just bad guy. And that's all you need to know. Bad guy. Girlfriend. She's his girlfriend, and that's all you need to know about her. His friend, who might be Pedro. He's his friend. It might be Pedro. That's all we know about him. It's just so, like, just... I don't even know if one-dimensional is the proper term. I think half-dimensional characters is something... if that, even.
You could, like, literally describe the characters in, like, 3 words or less. Because his girlfriend, that's all she is just girlfriend. That's all the bad guys are, just bad guys. It's like the most surface level characters you could ever make.
It does feel like this is based on like a non-existent video game or something.
Yeah.
Because this feels like a video game movie, but for some reason the video game doesn't exist. And that's even more... That becomes even more apparent with the next one.
The next one.
Also, another thing, the twist in this movie doesn't make sense.
I'm trying to even... Oh, that's... Yeah.
The guy he was trying to kill, he wasn't actually trying to kill him. He was actually working with Jason Statham. I was like, what?
And it turns out that the person Jason Statham was working for was actually working against him the whole time, too. It's so weird.
And for a second, I thought the guy playing Don Kim, the guy he was trying to assassinate at the beginning of the movie,
Yeah.
I thought he was played by Lao Che from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Because they look very similar, but it's not the same guy, unfortunately. It'd be hilarious if it was, though.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have anything else to say about Crank Part 1?
I honestly don't know. I don't think I do. The science doesn't make sense.
Oh, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll just... So, like, the basic premise...
You've complained about the science in some of the movies we've done on this podcast. The most notable example being Superman 4, probably.
4. Calculating all the nukes they launched at it. Anyway.
And I'm not even like a science major or anything, but even I could tell what was wrong with Superman 4. Oh, and also Armageddon. You really criticized Armageddon's science.
So, basically what they're saying is that this drug that Jason Statham has is blocking like receptors that's basically just causing like that's gonna cause his heart to stop. Like, fine, I don't know enough like specific receptors in the adrenal gland that could do that, but fine, it's technically plausible. What gets me is when he's like finally meeting up with Doc to go get treated, and he's like, well, I can use these other competitive inhibitors that'll replace the other inhibitors, but it won't buy you much time. So there's two different possibilities. Either this works the exact same way as the drug he's already taking, and it's not going to help him in the slightest, or it'll actually block it long enough for the body to just get rid of the other inhibitors. Meaning he either would have died like the exact same way, or he actually would have been cured. There should have been no weird in between of it's gonna help you for like an hour. Like, that doesn't make sense.
To be fair, though, the only guy giving us some of the science in this movie is Dwight Yoakam's character, who
did have his medical license revoked.
But yeah, I figured, like, just the number of drugs he does in this movie, it had to have killed him at some point. There's no way. Like, so, overall thoughts,
it's stupid, but it's fun.
It's really dumb and weird, but yeah, it's enjoyable. I think degenerate is the best word I could use to describe this movie.
No. The second one is degenerate. This one's, like, close, but it's not quite degenerate.
I would say decadent is a better word for the second movie, but we'll get to that. But this movie, it's so vulgar and stupid, and I kind of liked it sometimes because of that, and sometimes in spite of it. And the fact Jason Statham was able to do this movie with a straight face means
that is impressive.
Maybe he is a better actor than he gets credit for. And to be fair, the story does keep up the energy. You kind of want to see what weird shit he'll do next, which is more than I could say for the second film, which...
Yeah.
Do you want to get into the second movie now?
Sure.
Okay, so Crank High Voltage. This was released on April 15th in the United Kingdom. Yeah, and then it was released 2 days later in the United States. It cost $20 million and made $34.6 million.
So it did not succeed.
Yeah, thankfully it did not make its money back. The tagline, which oh my god, this tagline. And I'll put it in the chat because it's so funny. It's, he was dead, but he got, oh goddamn. If I can read this out. He was dead, but he got better.
That's awful. I got better though.
And the poster's just funny too, how he's got like the
car battery hooked up to his tongue.
I think I remember seeing like a list of worst movie taglines, and that was on there.
Yeah, that's fair.
But to be fair, that's what happens, because he died in the first movie, but somehow he's back.
He got better.
Somehow Jason Statham returned. Oh my goodness. Okay, so overall thoughts. I'll let you start with this one. Jesus.
So I had even less of an idea what I was getting into with the second movie than I did with the first movie. And I briefly mentioned this before we started recording the podcast. But there is a comparison I would like to make with this movie.
And I'm probably going to bleep it out because I think I know what it is.
No, you cannot bleep it out because it's actually what this is. So the first movie, a lot of people, compared it to Grand Theft Auto, I don't think it's the most correct comparison you could make, but fair.
I mean, it's Grand Theft Auto on crack.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
This is just a postal movie.
I knew you were gonna say that.
You can't bleep it out because
that is what it feels like, though. From
it is what it is.
From what little I've seen of like the trailer for that movie, that's kind of what this movie feels like. Just
yeah, like all of the.
And now I'm glad I haven't seen that movie. If this is what it's like, I'm glad I haven't seen that movie.
Well, I'd actually say that the actual Postal movie is, it's not as insane pacing wise. It's still psychotic in its own way, but it is a bit of a slower movie than Crank 2. But like everything from like the weird like social commentary and interactions, like the group of porn stars that are arguing for higher wages, the weird interaction with the dog owners trying to get their like collar, all the blatant disregard for life and property, like it's all very, very postal. It's so strange. All of the dialogue, the weird racism, like the two biggest differences between this and Postal are Jason Statham doesn't really act like the Postal dude, and Al Qaeda doesn't actually show up in this movie. If Al Qaeda had shown up, then it would have been a Postal movie.
And if it was made by He Who Shall Not Be Named. We're still not naming him on the podcast. Won't stand for that. But yeah, I wasn't surprised when you said that. Like after watching that movie, I was like thinking, this is kind of what this is what I feel like that movie is like. Did you have any thoughts on it besides that?
So it's just kind of an awful movie.
It's pretty bad.
At first I was getting some enjoyment kind of early on, but it kind of wore out its shtick by the end of it because
that's what I felt. Yeah, like the first third of it was kind of fun, but then it just got I got to a point where I was like, why am I watching this?
Yeah. Because it feels like it's trying too hard to try and capture the same feeling of the first one and try to like outdo it, but it doesn't really do either very well.
What worked with the first one is that it played it pretty straight. At least I think they did. Like, because there were parts of it I was like, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be funny or not. But with this one, you can tell there's parts of it they were trying to be funny, but then it falls completely flat. It just doesn't work at all. It's basically kind of like the first one, except it's turned up to 11, I guess, kind of, but it's like just like it's even more gross and immature than the first movie. And like I said, I kind of enjoyed the first third of it, but then it just got so tiresome and obnoxious that I kind of started to hate it.
Yeah.
And I also just thought the plot was boring. Like, the plot wasn't as good as the first one, because the first one actually had a pretty clever premise, at least for an action movie. At least that, like, that you could pull ideas from. Like, you have to come up with all these ideas to get him, like, to, like, keep his adrenaline up. But this one just kind of gave up with that. Like, there were, like, maybe a few scenes where they're like, oh, he has to, like, do this to, like, get his electricity flowing. But then they stopped doing that for some reason. And it's just like, okay, what the hell was the point of this then?
Yeah.
I fast-forwarded through, like, the last third of this because I was sick of it.
There were parts that I ended up, I guess this is jumping a little farther ahead, but I kind of skipped through the scene where the guy cut his nipples off.
I had to skip over that. I
skipped through some of the final fight just because it was the same punches over and over again.
And like this is coming from a person. I'm like I've seen a lot of violent shows, violent movies. I've watched Game of Thrones for fuck's sake, but like with this one, I was like going like, just what are you doing, man? Come on, stop it.
Yeah.
Like, when the movie was over, I was in a bad enough mood that I decided to watch Monsters Inc. right afterwards to cheer myself up, and thankfully I didn't end that day in a bad mood, so there's that, you know.
You want to know how I followed up Crank 2?
Oh god.
The Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, that, yeah, perfect feel-good movie.
It's amazing. Buffalo Bill is more sane than anyone featured in this movie.
More sane than the directors of this movie. Which, speaking of which, this one was also directed by Mark Neville-Dean and Brian Taylor. Or, sorry, Brian Taylor. Mistype. There weren't any brains involved with this. Well, actually, I take it back, but we'll get to that. And the music of this movie was done by Mike Patton of the band Faith No More.
Really?
I thought that was kind of interesting. We don't usually...
That's so weird.
Cast. I think quite a lot of cast members from the first came back.
Yeah, including some that don't make sense that they're back, but that's whatever.
Yeah, Jason Statham came back. Most importantly, Dwight Yoakam came back.
Yes.
Amy Smart, his girlfriend, came back. And coincidentally, Amy Smart was in another movie called High Voltage.
Oh, really?
Came out in 1997, and I haven't seen it, but it's probably better than this. I mean...
Ooh, direct-to-video.
Even Pedro came back, but he
did.
He's playing his character's brother from the first movie, because doesn't that character die in the first movie?
Yeah, he does. He gets shot in the warehouse. We're gonna talk more about that brother because there are some decisions that are made.
Yeah, there were also some ones I was not expecting, like David Carradine. I was like, holy shit, David Carradine is in this, and then he's barely in it.
Yeah, no, isn't he just in like the 2 newscasts?
He like shows up like towards the end, and I barely even remember what he does. I just remember he has a beard and he's a little perverted or something.
Ron Jeremy shows up.
Yeah, Ron Jeremy has a cameo. There's quite a few celebrity cameos. Chester Bennington's in this again. Dennis Reynolds again. The lead singer of Tool has a cameo.
Glenn Howerton shows up again for a scene.
Yeah, I mentioned him, Dennis Reynolds. Lauren Hawley, which she was in Dumb and Dumber and Turbulence. She's apparently in this somewhere. Lloyd Kaufman was in this somewhere, but I must have missed him.
Yeah, no, I don't remember seeing Lloyd Kaufman.
That must have been one of the parts I skipped over or something. As well as Corey Haim, he's in this. I don't remember who he plays. But I do remember this guy, though. John Delancey, he's in this, which he is most well known for playing Q on Star Trek The Next Generation. He's like this alien with like... I don't know if you know much about Q. But
I know who Q is.
Okay, yeah. He's like basically this like alien with like omniscient powers, I guess, and he's like super annoying to the Enterprise crew in that show. And I was not expecting him to be in this at all.
No.
I was like, holy shit, is that Q? Like... And he's like a newscaster in this. We'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah.
Leonard Maltin, what do you want to guess he gave this?
I'm gonna guess he gave this one a bomb. I mean, he can't have given it anything else.
Well, you were close. Give it 1.5 out of 4.
Wow.
That's probably about what I would give it, actually, now that I think about it. He called it a brainless, tasteless sequel. Ridiculous action thriller, has no decipherable storyline, and is crammed with gratuitous violence and sex. Strains to be hip, but comes off cheap and vulgar. I can't believe I'm saying this, but for once, I actually agree with Leonard Maltin.
Yeah.
Okay, so the plot of this one is sort of like King Kong Lives with Jason Statham, where in the previous movie he fell and hit the ground and supposedly died, but then he gets brought back to life by doctors because they gave him an artificial heart.
And they wanted his heart because he survived the events of the first movie, so they could give it to their gang leader.
Maybe he wouldn't have gone through all this if he went to the Family Heart Center from RoboCop. I gotta think of it as also kind of like Iron Man.
Yeah.
Because he also has a artificial heart put in. But yeah, so he wakes up, he goes on a rampage to try and find his real heart, and then meanwhile he has to use jumper cables to charge his artificial heart. Okay. So yeah, the plot, again, doesn't make much sense.
No. And the science is even worse in this one.
Yeah, because I don't think that's what happens when you electrocute yourself, unless you're a Highlander.
No. Because, like, he's supposed to have an external battery, which he does get one eventually, and that's how it would actually work. But no, if you keep shocking yourself, it's not going to charge the artificial heart. If anything, it'll make it stop on the spot, or maybe even catch fire. So...
Yeah. Okay, let's go through this. So, I guess we can start with pros, but again, what are pros in this movie? I found it funny that this started off with like a video game version of the ending to the first one. What the hell? Like, just... I guess I did say the first movie felt like a video game, and now they're taking it literally.
Yeah.
There's another scene that well, again, we'll get to that. You probably even know what scene Okay, you got John Delancey as a news anchor, which some of his stuff I thought was funny.
Yeah.
Like, that part was kind of making me think of RoboCop.
Oh, just like with the newscasts that they had throughout and
the fake newscast, except he's like super sarcastic during all of it. It's just... he's one of the only actors in this movie that comes out unscathed, I gotta say that.
Yeah, it's because he's barely in
it. Yes, probably. There is one part towards the beginning where Jason Statham shoves a shotgun up a dude's ass. And he asks where his strawberry tart is. Then once he gets his information, he just says, "You can keep that," and leaves the gun there. I mean, what an asshole. But again, that was like one of the scenes that was making me go, okay, that was enjoyable at least, so there's that. You do see Dwight Yoakam playing Mortal Kombat at one point.
Yeah, that is right. That is true.
Again, to show that this movie is a video game. I found the editing when he's like recharging himself the first time, I thought was so fucking funny. Like, what?
And it's a very similar sort of premise to the first movie where he has to do all these like insane things to keep his heart charged.
And some of those scenes, at least towards the beginning, were funny. Like,
yeah, like the car battery when he puts one like on his nipple and the other one.
One of my favorites was when the cops taser him. And instead of like knocking him out, it just recharges his heart. I thought that was pretty funny. Or when he puts on like a dog shock collar to like
yeah. Well, that whole scene is weird because he's like, hey, because there's this like, I don't even know how to describe the scene. There's like these two people that are trying to make sure that their shock collar for their dog works, and he runs up, he's like, hey, I'm from PETA, you can't be doing that. Takes it off the dog, puts it on him. It's so weird.
It was, yeah. And they were just, they're obviously looking at him like he's fucking crazy. Because he's like telling because they're holding the button for it to like shocks.
And he's like, shock me, do it.
He's like telling them to press it, and they're just like, dude, fuck off.
And then there was...
You're right, these characters are more insane than Buffalo Bill.
Of course, one of my favorite recharges is when he's fighting this one dude at like a power plant, and he gets like shoved into a control panel, and then he gets like lightning powers for a little bit, and then it turns into a kaiju movie.
Okay,
for like 3
that
minutes.
was the scene. That was the scene I was gonna mention. Okay, there's this like random kaiju fight between Jason Statham and this one dude. This is the only scene that I'd seen from this movie prior. It's the only scene. And it's probably the most entertaining part of the movie because, I mean, it is really stupid, but it's at least fun.
Yeah, and there was at least effort into it because they had to make like the miniature of the power plant. They made weird masks for the characters to wear. It's
fun. I mean, the movie.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to be fun, I feel like this movie just tried to be gross instead.
Yeah.
In a lot of scenes. Like, I'd have given this movie more of a pass if it was like that.
Yeah.
You know, instead of what the rest of the movie was like. But yeah, so this entire movie, okay, because the previous movie, he's basically operating on drugs the whole time. And now this movie, he's operating on electricity. I mean, how is this dude not dead? I mean...
And one of the weirder ones is
he gonna turn into like... Is he gonna turn into like Ernest at the end of Ernest Goes to Jail or something?
And at one point, the doc tells him, you know, you gotta generate some static charge. You gotta rub up against people, and so he's at like a horse like racetrack, trying to like rub his shoulder against another guy. Then he just starts groping this old woman elsewhere in the track. It's so weird, and then it leads to the other, like the most gratuitous sex scene I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Because it really feels like they just wanted to, like, do the one, like, try and outdo the scene from the first movie.
Yeah. And it's not as funny this time, but...
No.
That was kind of the part of the movie when I was starting to notice this isn't as fun as it should be.
No.
Because it got to that scene, I'm like, well, it's just like the first movie, but not as good. But they're like, okay, but it is kind of funny, though, because they're like... His girlfriend's there. They have sex in public, but they're on like a horse race track, and they're just
yeah.
And they have to like censor it too. Like, oh my god! Like, they play "Keep on Loving You" in this movie
several times throughout the movie,
and "The Stroke" by Billy Squier that plays in the strip club scene. And that strip club scene. That he kills like everybody in that strip club. Like,
yeah, no, it's insane.
So many people died just during that scene, and I think even some of the strippers got killed too. It's absurd.
No, one of them got shot in the back, and I think the joke was supposed to be that she had like breast implants, and so like you hear a pop noise as blood and like other liquid just trickles out of there. It's so weird.
We also get a little bit more character development for Dwight Yoakam, because he says at one point he lost his medical license because he fucked up his wife's vaginal rejuvenation in their basement. I'm sorry. What? Oh, honestly, I should just insert like the Tim Allen going.
He's also got the line early on: "Is Doc Miles gonna have to choke a bitch?" It's
I
such a
kind of
weird
want to
movie.
see. Okay, if they were gonna do another one of these movies, I kind of just want it to be a spin-off movie about Dwight Yoakam's character.
And he's just like this doctor for all these weird hitmen in this psychotic world.
Exactly, yeah. Oh god. There's a ferret in this. That's it. Just there's a ferret in this movie. I like ferrets. It's nice seeing one.
He also meets up with Don Kim at one point in the movie, the guy that he didn't kill in the last movie. And they're in the car together talking, and to give himself a recharge, he just sticks his finger in like the car charger while he's just talking, and everyone just kind of looks at him like, "What the hell are you doing?"
I don't know. Another weird thing is the bad guy from the first movie. His head is like preserved in a tank or something.
And he's talking with like this weird like text to speech thing hooked up to a water tank that he's in.
There's like this movie where like I think they like preserved Hitler's head in like a thing or something. I'm trying to remember. I think it was like they saved Hitler's brain or something was the name of it. What the fuck was that? Are we just going into straight up science fiction with this movie? I mean, and the ending of this movie, the ending of this movie is so weird because like the very last shot, he got caught on fire and then just flips off the camera. Like, what the hell was that? Oh my god.
Can we talk about Pedro for a second and his new character in this?
I can't remember if I wrote anything about him.
Because I wrote down something. Because
definitely
it's
not
one
in
of
prose.
Those...
Definitely not in the prose section.
No. So they have him back now as the brother of his character from the first movie. He's trying to, hunt down the people that killed him in that one. And they introduce this weird thing where he says he has full body Tourette's syndrome.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay, I remember.
And
now.
so throughout the movie, he just like stops walking and will just like start humping things or like freaking out. It is so strange. That's like the one part towards the beginning where I was like, hold on, this feels like a Postal movie. Just because of that. And then it kept getting worse and weirder, and it just kept feeling like one. Like, I know earlier I mentioned there's this scene where they're just trying to get away from the cops, and they just end up in this crowd of people who are porn stars going on strike for higher wages.
Yeah, that was strange. Like, even Ron Jeremy is there.
Yeah, and I'm like 90% sure that there's like something in one of the actual Postal games that's like that.
Probably,
it's so strange.
It was weird. They were trying. Yeah, we can get into cons now if you want, because I don't have much positive left to say about this thing. But yeah, there were these weird attempts at social commentary ?
And it was a little hard to tell what exactly they were trying to say.
There was like one part where you have like this weird TV flashback. You see like a younger version of Jason Statham, and he's just on TV with his mom talking about violent video games.
Yeah, and like he didn't grow up with the dad. It's weird.
That felt very strange. And the, like you mentioned, the porn star stuff. Once again, very disorienting editing. Camera movement.
Yeah.
So disorienting. I had trouble saying that word. There's like one car chase towards the beginning of the movie that felt like the opening of not Casino Royale, sorry, Quantum of Solace. It felt like the opening of Quantum of Solace.
Yeah.
I said the first movie was a bit in your face. This one, it takes it to another level. Like, it's not just in your face, it's up in your personal space, it's touching you inappropriately, it's, there were times with the editing where I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. No, it was hard to tell what was happening.
And I said the first one had, like, funny transitions from scene to scene. There's zero flow in this movie from scene to scene.
No.
It's just like,
it really is just, and then we get a scene of the whole.
Not
way
even that.
through.
And then we get a shot of, just like,
That's right.
Like with Turkish Star Wars again. Given this, they didn't steal footage from other movies for this. At least don't. Well, they took footage from the first movie, but
Yeah.
fair enough. There's this really graphic operations scene towards the beginning.
Yeah, where they're like taking out his heart.
There's a reason I don't watch doctor shows. I mean, jeez. And thankfully, it looks really fake. So I was like, okay, yeah, it's. And it also makes it so that Chev Chelios is yet another character on this podcast to get his heart removed.
But he survives.
He survives, yeah. The poor guy from Rambo 5 didn't survive. Well, not so much poor guy. He was an asshole, but the guy from Temple of Doom definitely didn't survive. Again, there's like barely a plot or substance to this one, especially
even
less
one. So than the first one.
Yeah, because the first one at least had the thing of, okay, he's got to keep his adrenaline rush going, but this one kind of forgets about the whole electricity thing at some point.
Yeah.
Or I just gave up and even caring.
Well, it kind of does, because they get him the battery he needs, and then he's just kind of set for the rest of the movie.
This movie's just like 90 minutes of Jason Statham going around harassing people. And it just wasn't as fun in this one.
No, it wasn't.
This movie just kind of came across as a bit mean-spirited, and it's even more misanthropic than the first one. Like, everybody in this movie is just so sleazy and awful to each other. Like, and oh my god, the bad guys in this, they're just they're not only really caricatures, they're so stereotypical too.
Yeah. No, like, I think I mentioned this. Like, the first movie is kind of racist. This movie is really racist.
For some reason, there's a lot of, like, attempt at, like, racist jokes in this, and it's just not funny. It's...
Because all that happens is one character calls another character a racial slur. And that's supposed to be the joke, and they do it over and over and over again.
It's like middle school level humor. It's just it's bad. It's saying a lot that this movie's like even more racist and like sexist than the first one was. I mean, jeez, like
there's this character that shows up a couple times that's supposed to be like a prostitute that doesn't speak English very well.
Yeah.
And her whole thing was yelling out things that were related to sex and other people.
Yeah, that she was really annoying. I didn't like that character. Really, like, a lot of... the movie just kind of got obnoxious after a while.
Yeah.
It started to feel like a shitty YouTube video. I don't know.
I think in one of these I put down YouTube poop editing.
It felt like if YouTube pranksters tried to recreate the first movie at some points.
Yeah, no, it's...
Or if like a really...
weird.
Or if like a really bad sitcom tried doing a parody of the first movie. Or hell, it kind of felt like a trauma movie at some points. A little bit, and just the weird... just... gross out humor and stuff. I didn't like it. Okay, so we mentioned the first one had like a lot of nudity in it. This one,
it, there's a lot of nudity, and it's even less relevant than it was in the first one.
it's so gratuitous. Like the camera zooms are so absurd. There's like so many ass shots in this.
Yeah, no, there was like a minute straight of just ass shots at one point in the movie when they're like getting to the island.
Oh my goodness. Whoever directed this really wanted to remind people they were heterosexual, I guess. It's just so weird.
I will say there were 3 jokes throughout the movie that actually kind of got me to laugh.
Is this counting the Godzilla scene or
Oh, no. Okay, so like 3 jokes that I guess I haven't mentioned that did get a laugh out of me. So at one point, Jason Statham meets up with his girlfriend from the first movie. And she was like, why didn't you call? And he's like, I left you a voice message. And they played the voice message. And, at the first movie, when he leaves that, he's falling like 3,000 feet to the ground. So all you hear on the answering machine is just the sound of wind rushing as he's falling.
Okay, that's actually that's pretty good actually. I forgot about that one, but
and then at one point, the guy with full body Tourette syndrome, he's trying to call up. Yeah, he's trying to call up.
I don't think people are gonna vote for Pedro after seeing him in this movie.
He's trying to put in like a phone number to call a gangster, and the phone number's like 40 numbers long for whatever reason. So he just keeps putting in numbers. It goes on for like 20 seconds for some reason.
Or that's just what happens when you have Tourette's, I guess. I don't know. Fuck this.
And then at the end of the movie, when one of the gangsters gets shot, he's supposed to be sort of like he's supposed to be kind of like a cartel member. And when he gets shot, he yells out Ronnie James Dio.
I don't remember that.
It went by really fast, and I wouldn't have caught it if I didn't have subtitles on.
I had subtitles on during this movie too, but I don't remember that. Granted, I think like halfway into this movie, I just started like fast forwarding through parts of this, so maybe I missed that. This is also another movie where someone gets their genitals destroyed. And actually, that happens twice in this. And I'm like, no, I'm not a fan of that. Stop it. It was bad enough in From Dusk Till Dawn 3. I don't want to see that again. I'll give the first one this. I mean, for all its problems, it felt more like a movie than this did.
Yeah. This was like a bad dream watching this one.
Yeah, I kind of felt that too. Like, it felt like just one of those dreams that you're like, I want to wake up as soon as possible. And it just felt, maybe part of it is because I'd watched the first one like a few days before this, but like the concept just didn't feel as fresh in this.
Yeah.
And the first one had this like, again, for all its faults, it had this intense like atmosphere to parts of it. Like it felt like I was getting like took on a ride in that first movie at least.
Yeah.
There was an intensity to it. Here it just feels like his electricity condition is more of a minor annoyance.
Yeah.
Rather than the thing that's driving him and at the same time hinders him. And then this movie was trying to be more ridiculous, but because some of it was like variations of the first movie, like the sex scene, for example, it just felt less funny too.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Escape from LA, come to think of it.
Yeah, because it tries to sort of capture what made, the first one a success, and it just wasn't able to.
Although, honestly, I'd probably rather watch Escape from LA than this movie. He managed to get me to compliment Escape from LA. Wow. And strangely, this one felt slower than the first.
It did, and it wasn't all that much longer, I don't think. It was like, what, 10 minutes longer?
It was like, yeah, 9-10 minutes longer, something like that. Like, the first one just had this ridiculous pace where it kept moving and moving, and this one, like, it kept slowing down.
Yeah.
During parts where you didn't need to. I don't particularly want to see a guy get his nipples cut off.
Yeah.
I don't even know why that was in this movie at all. You can say that about a lot of things about this movie. Like, why did you put that in there? Is that what this movie was? Was they were just trying to see what they could get away with?
It might have been, honestly.
Jesus. I also felt like Jason... Another thing I compliment about the first movie is Jason Statham. He seemed very committed to that role in that movie, you know. But in this one, he kind of felt... I don't know. Something about his performance seemed kind of off in this one compared to the first movie.
Yeah, it didn't feel like he was giving it quite the same energy that he did the first time.
Yeah, maybe he didn't want to make this movie. I think the problem is just the tone. The first one was trying to be serious, and it came across as funny due to how serious it was. Whereas this one, it was trying too hard to be ridiculous, and it just came across as off-putting.
Yeah.
By the halfway point of this movie, I was sick of this movie. It was trying too hard, and it just got boring.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to be silly and it's boring, that's not a good sign.
No.
I didn't think the action scenes were as good either. Like, I can't really remember most of the action scenes, if I'm being totally honest.
The only one I really remember is the final fight, and that's mostly just because they had the dude's head in a tank.
Yeah. Well, okay, if you count the Godzilla fight, I remember that one.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's, like, about it. The supporting characters in this movie, I think I mentioned this earlier, but they were really annoying.
Yeah, there's
and
no
it seemed like they were getting, like, way more screen time than Jason Statham was, which that was another thing I think that worked about the first movie, is it focused just on Jason Statham.
Yeah.
It didn't, like, have all these, like, just other plot lines going on. It was just Jason Statham. He needs to get his heart going. That's all you needed to know.
Yeah.
And that was what the movie focused on. This one, it's like, oh, Jason Statham needs to get his heart going, but then there's these racist stereotypes over here. There's these, like, strippers. There's this news report. It felt unfocused. It just didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't work. It didn't work. Also, such a waste of David Carradine in this movie. He showed up so late in the movie that I'd forgotten he was supposed to even be in it.
And he didn't really even serve much of a point.
Did he even interact with Jason Statham?
No, he never did.
If this movie knew what it was doing, it would have cast David Carradine as the main villain in this.
Yeah.
Have him play... I mean, we know he can play a good villain. Kill Bill anyone. Or, like Lone Wolf McQuade, you know, where he's fighting Chuck Norris. I mean, come on, have him play like one of the main villains or something. That would have been so much more fun than what you actually did. Okay, so do you have anything else to add, or?
No, I really don't think I do.
Do you want to get into overall thoughts, or is that it?
I mean, just to summarize, it's bad, but it's not as fun as the first movie is. Not by a long shot.
Yeah. The first movie was pretty enjoyable. This one's just like, let's take like the things that didn't work about the first movie and try to accentuate it.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it felt like. It just felt like it's just this really cheap and disgusting cash grab. Like, this should have been direct-to-video, honestly.
Yeah.
I can't believe this got put out in theaters.
It is...
Not that it, like, looks like a movie that shouldn't... I mean, it looks like a movie, but it's just so... It's bad enough that
it feels like it'd be a waste of your money if you actually went to go see it.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't see it in theaters in that case. And come to think of it, when I was watching it, my feelings towards it were kind of similar to some of the direct-to-video movies we've done on this podcast, like the From Dusk Till Dawn sequels.
Yeah.
Or Army of Frankensteins, where there's like a few scenes I liked because of how dumb and weird it was, but then it just kind of wore out its welcome, and I was like, just end, please.
Yeah.
You're wasting my time. Basically, I got to the end of it, and I went, why did I watch this?
Yeah.
The humor was terrible. It was really ugly to look at, too. Like, I don't think we mentioned this, but the color grading sucked.
The color grading was awful. That's, like, among the worst that we've seen on the podcast.
It's so gray and just unpleasant to look. It's so bad, yeah. There's no plot or flow to any of it. I didn't even think Jason Statham was that great in this. And the supporting cast sucked. They were bad and obnoxious. But it's not all negative. There were a few things I liked.
Yeah, there were a few bits that were kind of funny.
Mostly towards the beginning. It's mostly towards the beginning. Like the stuff where he's recharging himself, like the dog shock collar or the taser scene. Those scenes were actually pretty funny. The highlight is definitely the kaiju fight for me. That is like...
That part was pretty good.
That's like the one scene in it that I'm kind of like, I am sort of glad I watched this. But then again, I could have just looked up that scene on YouTube, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I'm probably not going to watch this again.
No.
If I hadn't watched Monsters, Inc. and Field of Dreams afterwards, I'd have spent the rest of that day in a really shitty mood, but I'm over it now, whatever. This movie was stupid, but I'm gonna move on now. And we've watched worse things for the podcast, so
which is a bit sad to say, but...
Yeah.
I think for Crank at least, though, I think that's all we have, so...
Yeah, I like the first one. The second one, no, it sucked.
Yeah. And I guess until the next one, roll the Andy Griffith.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.